Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce. Hey, man.
Hey, David. I asked you how you were doing, but you already told me. I don't know how much of that you want to share.
I just got like the world's worst cold. Like it, when I cough, I feel it right down to my toes.
Yeah.
I've had the strangest. Like I keep feeling like I'm asphyxiating
Yeah.
because I can't breathe. It has
Mm-hmm.
not been a happy last 24 hours, but I'm over the asphyxiation episodes. Maybe I'll have one on camera though, and that will be interesting for
That'd be
the.
exciting.
That'll be interesting.
All right.
Not that interesting. All right.
Yeah. Let's
Hopefully
avoid
I'm
that if we can.
okay. Hopefully I'll be over this soon. I got my first old timers hockey game Monday. I don't know if I'll be able to make it. I'll have to be asymptomatic. But
Among other
I've
things,
had
yeah.
this for about 10 days. If people, I've been away cycling in Croatia. Great holiday, and but I'm back, and here we go, Bruce. Bruce, I'm back to some what I consider absolutely essential news from the Edmonton Oilers. Without this, I don't think the Oilers were going to compete this year for the Stanley Cup, and I'm serious about that. I think it's the number one reason by far that the Oilers lost to the Vegas Golden Knights. The Oilers, I think, were a superior team, but they got out strategized. They got essentially out coached, which is a hard thing to say, but I think it was the number one reason, and it's real simple. The Oilers could not solve Vegas's zone defense. It's a zone defense that Bruce Cassidy utilized in Boston, which Boston kept last year and was the best defensive team in the NHL by far last year. The same zone defense took the Vegas Golden Knights to the Stanley Cup. The Oilers could not solve it, but the Vegas Golden Knights feasted. They feasted on the Oilers' man-to-man defense. The Oilers gave up, I think it was 3.7 goals a game
Yeah.
against Vegas, which would put them at the very bottom, like just the very worst teams in the NHL last year gave up 3.7 goals per game. It was, the players took a lot of heat. Darnell Nurse took a lot of heat. Leon Draisaitl took some heat, gave some heat to himself. Stuart Skinner took a lot of heat, but really, Bruce, it was the system that let the players down as much as anything else. They didn't necessarily execute their man-to-man system very well.
Right.
But anyway, it's changing. Derek
Mm-hmm.
Ryan was on Oilers Now last night, and I'll quickly read what he has to say, then get your reaction to this. Um, all righty, here we go. Ryan said to Bob Stauffer, and good for Bob for digging into this with Derek Ryan. He said they're trying out a couple different systems. One is like a neutral zone trap, like LA used against the Oilers, which is an exceedingly boring way to play hockey, but it's a good way to hold a lead. Um, from Ryan, quote, I just think we're trying to limit chance at limit goals against. Um, it's how we're going to succeed, how we're going to have success, where and when we want to have success, which is in the postseason. Jay Woodcroft has tried to implement these new system changes right away because we know it's a change we need to make. He said that he's played the zone man-to-man hockey in junior, mainly played zone as a pro. And then he said the changes aren't just in the neutral zone, but in the D zone. The D zone specifically, we're working on protecting the important areas of the ice. That means more time in the defensive zone because we're holding our zones and our lanes and our position a little more. But those longer lengths of time in our zone will be theoretically, hypothetically, on the perimeter. He says both man-to-man and zone are useful, but I think we just want to limit those mistakes that result in grade A's because in zone coverage you have layers of protection there. I think of the goal against Vegas. What game was it? He asks at home, and Stauffer says Game 6, where
6.
Game 6, where Marcia Show ends up in front of our net all alone, a Game 6 tap in. Under a zone coverage, you have your layers of protection there. That doesn't happen. That's just one example of a situation where we're trying to limit that. Mistakes are going to happen. It's a game of hockey. It's the highest level, but mistakes happen. When those do happen in the D zone, we want to have layers of protection where it doesn't result in the guy all alone in front of our net. Amen. Bruce McCurdy, amen. What's your comment?
Yeah, they had to do something. I mean, last year the Oilers finished number one in the league comfortably in offense with 325 goals, 24 more than Boston, even that won the President's Trophy. But in goals against, they were smack dab middle of the pack, 17th out of 32. And, that's kind of where they've been for too long, even as a competitive team. They're rarely anything close to elite on the defensive goal prevention side of it. And system is part of it. And I mean, just the way the forwards play, like David and Draisaitl play the game fast, as I call it. And what that means is just more events per minute that they're on the ice. And some of those events are at the wrong end of the ice. It's just the nature of the beast. So a new system will be interesting to see how they adapt to it, both in terms of how they play the game, but in terms of whether it frustrates them, in terms of their usual style. I'm on the record, I think, on this podcast as saying one thing I wouldn't mind seeing from the Oilers this upcoming season is McDavid and Draisaitl with 20 fewer points each, but plus 20 more each, and by that I mean at 5-5.
They should both be plus 40.
Winning the goal differential battle more convincingly.
Yeah.
And we just aren't there yet. Matthias Ekholm, a voice who's been silent in camp so far, but was very noticeable over the summer. One of the things he said was that the team needs to be a little bit more patient. He says in the playoffs, he said you might have to play a 1-1 game into double overtime before you find a way to win it. And clearly the team took his words to heart, because so far they've played 2 home games and both of them were 1-1 going into overtime. And frankly, were to me fairly boring games. I mean,
yeah,
obviously you haven't got the full teams and stuff, but even the game the other night where the Oilers had the top 6 intact, they were they played a pretty conservative style, and I think that's going to be the way. And the idea is, I think you keep events to a lower number. As Ryan says, you might spend more time in your own zone, but that's fine if that time doesn't include Jonathan Marchessault all alone in front of the net for the tap-in as often as it seemed to in that Vegas series. And patience is, that's veteran hockey. And Matthias Ekholm, who played in Nashville he dates all the way back to the Barry Trotz era. He was a rookie the last year that Trotz was there. And then Peter Laviolette and then John Hines that were in Nashville are known as sort of system and defense first coaches. And I'm happy with the Oilers coaching staff, because I think, like many of the players, they are young and learning. And it seems they should have and will have learned a big lesson from the Vegas series. And it sounds like they're already adjusting to that and trying to do things differently. And it's something that probably needs to be done. The idea being, if you play a 1-1 game, we saw this the other night, you play a 1-1 game long enough, who's going to score the winning goal in that game when push comes to shove? I'll put my money on McDavid and Draisaitl, converting when they do get the chances. And I think the style of hockey that we're going to see, though, is going to be a little duller.
It could well be, Bruce. It could well be. Woodcroft came up under Todd McClellan, who plays LA as a man-to-man team.
Mm-hmm.
Tampa won the Stanley Cup 2 years in a row with man-to-man. Obviously, this system can work.
Yes.
I don't think it worked for the Oilers personnel. I don't think it was ever going to work. Darnell Nurse is too aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought out that impatience in his game to win the puck. And he would be caught out. Famous goal against Vegas where he's following his man, Riley Smith, out past the blue line. And, that guy makes a quick pass, and Zach Whitecloud goes in wide open lane for an open shot. Leon Dreisaitl's another guy who was never going to succeed man-to-man because Leon's attention to defense isn't it's not strong enough. He reads the game very well. I think this new system he's going to thrive under it, Bruce, because in this system the center reads the game. He's if the defensemen stay to their sides, you don't get two defensemen caught in the same corner.
Right.
Either you're in your corner or you're in front of the net.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that horrible 2D in one corner and the center having to cover in the slot, be the last line of defense. But if a defenseman gets beat out of the corner, it's up to the center then to read that and to force the guy to the outside, try to cut off his lane to the net, force him to the outside. The defenseman doesn't follow him into the high slot. It's the center's job. I think Leon's going to be really good at that. Connor McDavid was excellent at man-to-man defense. He was the only Oilers center who did not get burned repeatedly by blown defensive coverage in man-to-man. He was exceptionally strong. Connor McDavid can play any defensive system. He is going to thrive in this defensive system as well. But I really think it's the defensemen who are going to benefit the most. Nurse will have a very structured, simple task. Don't charge all over everywhere to make the play. Cover the front of the net. Come down like the hammer of Thor when they get there. He can do that. And Evan Bouchard and Cody Ceci were often caught out in man-to-man because they got slow boots. And they could not recover fast enough to get back to the front of the net and cover. They are going to benefit from this system as well, as will Matthias Ekholm. I think and Desharnais is built for this system.
Yeah.
Marcus Niemelainen. Now, some defensemen, I think Philip Broberg can play man-to-man. I think he is adept defensively, a great enough skater to play man-to-man. This system may not accentuate his positives, but he is a big guy, really good defensively. So I think he could be like McDavid, fine in whatever defensive structure that they bring out. I think Kulak is the same way. Kulak can play man-to-man and excel. But Bouchard can't, Ceci can't, Nurse can't, and Ekholm struggled. So I'm really happy about this, Bruce. I'm just looking at my list of things to talk about, and that's it for that topic. So
I'm keen to see Nurse learning and sticking to this system. I think he has the potential of being a very strong defender, and his chasing of the puck by the man-to-man system is, it's a real double-edged sword. And we were on the receiving end of said sword a few times in the postseason last year and during the season as well, for that matter. But I think he's going to be a real key player to watch in all of this, to me. And
he could transform his reputation, Bruce. He got eviscerated last year in oil country because he was running around trying to do too much, making mistakes. I mean, this was how many posts I wrote a number of posts on this. Like, he's trying to do too much, and we didn't figure it out. Like, we hadn't yet put all the pieces together. We weren't talking about zone and man-to-man defense. We just were blaming him. And really it was the system that was asking him in some ways to do this. Now, he was over aggressive in the system and he got beat in the system. So the execution's on him. But I just think he's a guy who wants to win the game all by himself, and he can't. And he's got to play within it. This will help him. I think he's going to look better than ever before in his career, playing with Bouchard, who can really handle that puck, make passes. He's just got to take care of his own front of the net, take care of his corner, move the puck, skate with the puck. We're going to see some really great play, great systems play out of Darnell Nurse this year. I'm excited, and we're going to see the best of him, I think. Bruce, let's move on. Steve Staios has left the team for the Ottawa Senators. What's the news there, my friend?
Yeah, this has been kind of an open secret for weeks/months that There was some talk last year that the Oilers were grooming Staios, if I'm allowed to use that word anymore, grooming Staios to become the next general manager of the team. And he was an interesting option. Of course, not the only one, but the organization chose to go in a different direction with the addition of Jeff Jackson as the CEO of hockey operations, a new title. And I think from there, the writing was fairly on the wall. All along, there was this talk of Staios having a close connection with the new Ottawa owner, who last year was in the mix as being a potential Ottawa owner. And all last year, people in the know were saying, well, if that guy, I'm trying to remember his name, come up with Michael Anheuser, but I don't think he's Anheuser.
The Andauer, the new owner?
Andauer, thank you. And sure enough, he did, the ownership bid did succeed. And it seemed from there that it was likely that Steady Steve would wind up in Ottawa, and the addition of Jackson sort of, an extra layer in between sort of made the Edmonton situation a little muddier, and he wound up basically following the course that was suspected for him by insiders quite some time ago, and I wish him good luck in Ottawa. He did serve the Oilers as scout in the OHL last year, among other things, in sort of undefined duties. And last year, the Oilers made their primary draft pick, Bo Akey, from the OHL. So thanks, Steady Steve, for that. I think we got a live one there. And good luck. There's a thing with the world of hockey executives is there's nobody really owns anybody, right? There's no salary cap, there's no rights. People move around, and it just is sometimes the right guy is in the wrong place, and then he winds up in the right place, or sometimes he never does.
Yeah, he came in as the Jeff Jackson, but they didn't really trust him. It seemed like Jackson's come in and he's made a lot of moves, right? Stales came in as the new Jeff Jackson. It was kind of like Ken Holland had enough muscle or something to push him to the side. I don't know what kind of power games go on, Bruce. I'm just guessing here, but it didn't seem like that worked out for Stales coming here. And then they hired Jackson, and he ain't the man. Suddenly he's just another dude in player personnel, and so good luck to him. He did great in Hamilton. He's obviously a smart, serious hockey guy. The Oilers probably benefited, the Bo Akey pick.
Yeah.
That not have fans chatting up a storm. They got to play that "Hey Bo Diddley" song when Bo Akey's on the ice, I think.
Or Sweet George Brown. Harlem Globetrotters theme.
He was that good. I missed it. I was in Croatia. I didn't see him play.
I saw a video he's back in the OHL now, and he played a shift in 3-on-3 overtime yesterday, where he was just all over the puck, and he kept winning it and kept beating guys and taking it to the net a couple of times. Didn't score, but looked fantastic in what was, to my eye, an utterly unstructured sequence. 3-on-3 is it's not exact. It has to be man to man for one thing, and you just don't see that much structure. And I don't see a lot of structure in his game, but I see a tremendous amount of potential. And he's 18 years old.
So is he like Jordan Osterley, or is he better than that?
Yeah, well, he's something like that. Like, he's really, really nimble on his skates. Just a fabulous skater. And he reads the game really well in the, within the context of an individual play. Those that are suggesting that he's already better than Philip Broberg, or that he should be making the Oilers this time next year, I think they're a little overly optimistic. Like, this is a kid. He's going to need time to develop, but he could develop into something special. So let's give him at least his 2 years in junior, and then when he's ready to turn pro in training camp 2025, maybe he pushes for NHL then. I'd be surprised. I think you probably also need a year pro in the minor leagues, and then 2026 with 2 years to go on his ELC, then we're talking.
Maybe man-to-man defense will be back in fashion by then, because the zone does favor, like Marcus Niemelainen's stock just went up in the Oilers organization. Marcus Niemelainen played a really good game the other night too. Yeah, so the Jordan Osterley is nothing to sneer at. He's a good hockey player. I guess the top end of that kind of player is Cale Makar. So there's a wide variety of these fast skating, unbelievably good, agile defensemen who can use their edges and make plays, and we'll see where he ends up in the end. All right, Bruce. Moving on. What is going on with Philip Broberg? Because I hear it's 3 games in, and there's all this mumbling, grumbling, and about Broberg. I mean, what's happening? Listen, I don't get it, because he's played a number of games for the Edmonton Oilers. We can evaluate him on those games. He's been really pretty good. In a third pairing role, he kind of aced it last year. Mm-hmm. He can play third pairing defense and do very well in the NHL. I think we already know that. So what's all this? Is it that people wish that we had Trevor Zegras and all the headaches that guy brings to your team?
Yeah, him or Matthew Boldy or Cole Caulfield or all of the, nice. People are still relitigating the 2019 draft.
That's it, isn't it?
Yep, it's still that. And I mean, last week the people were talking about Bo Wakey being a good draft pick, and the topic immediately turned from not, hey, Ken Holland made a good draft pick, to, hey, Ken Holland drafted this guy at 56 and he took Philip Broberg at number 8. What the hell? And it's still relitigating that. And I mean, knock it off.
Yeah, well,
he's a 22-year-old kid. He's still on his entry-level contract. He's still breaking into the NHL. It's going to take time. I mean, it's my good friend Wood Guy, Darcy McLeod, was writing the other day that he is more or less right on schedule for a defenseman that was drafted from outside of the NHL sort of CHL pipeline, a European defenseman. And sure, there might be the odd Miro Heiskanen out there that breaks in at 21 and impresses the hell out of everyone. And he's not that guy. He also didn't go 4th overall. He went 8th overall.
Big difference, too.
Yeah. And I mean, give the guy a chance. I mean, but there's this faction out there that wants to just brutalize Ken Holland for everything, even before all the facts are in. Patience. It's called, 5 years. Like give a kid 5 years. My friend Lowtide says. I say, which isn't quite the same, but close. Give him to the end of his ELC, which might be 4 years for an older draft pick or 5, and then we have a better idea what we got. He is this year making $863. On the cap hit. And he and Vincent Desharnais are the only 2 of the 7 projected defensemen on the team who are below $2.75 million. And this idea that, they need to move on from him and bring in another $4 or $5 or $7 million top 4 defenseman, it just doesn't add up. You got to have value somewhere in your roster. And if you're paying a third pairing defenseman under $1 million a year, that's, it's not the end of the world. I mean, ideally, you'd love him to be a first pairing defenseman. Well, he's not yet, but give him at least a chance. Turning on a 22-year-old kid, I'm sorry. I don't think that is good fanning at all.
I think it's fair when you point out the GM's other players drafted lower are doing better. Fair enough. That's a fact.
Forwards too.
Yeah, they're forwards. So this is all fair. But to take it out on the player, that's where it's always bothered me, Bruce.
Yeah.
That's where I think, watch the freaking games and evaluate this player in the context of players like him, and do that and make your assessment based on that. And as you say, this is where Oscar Klefbom was when he had a breakout year.
He got pushed in a little faster because he came onto the Dallas Aikens Oilers that didn't even have 4 good defensemen. So he went right into the top 4 in the second half of his 4th year from draft plus 4 years. So really right up to sort of mid-season last year, Broberg and Klefbom's development paths were almost identical. And in the second half of his fourth draft plus 4 year, Clef got the push, and he played okay on a team that was terrible.
In some ways, I like Bro. Like the players at the same age. I really like Broberg's defensive ability. His quick feet and ability to stick in front of a player who's breaking down on him, even really fast players. Man, the Oilers really don't have that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys are rare. There's probably about 10 of them in the NHL. And there's McCarr and Morrissey and these defensemen who are capable of doing that. Wow. So if he becomes that player, that's gonna still turn out to be a golden draft pick. Now he might not. He might not work out. We'll see. Bruce, the big battle for the last line of the center position. People are also eating their hearts out, or that's not the right word. They're insane with rage. That Brandon Sutter might make the team. I see that as well. So here's what I saw with Brandon Sutter. Someone who's really smart. Someone who is like will make solid plays, smart plays with the puck. Someone who understands defensive hockey, but someone who might be too slow to execute. And I'm not convinced that he's going to be fast enough. I think he thinks the game fast enough, but his feet have got to catch up to things. Is that your cat over there encroaching? Cat encroachment.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that he's fast enough, so I can see the criticism of that. But he hasn't been in the end. He's getting over COVID.
Long COVID,
set you
and
back.
apparently it was a nightmare that he was having trouble breathing for 2 years. So it was a pretty serious onset of it. He seems to be through it. I saw him interviewed the other day, and he was just happy to be here. At the old Crash Davis approach, and he's slow, and that's probably going to be the decider. But he's smart, as you say. He's experienced. He's in the right place a lot. I noticed he's quite competitive with stick on puck. That when there's a scramble, he gets the stick in there and on the puck, and it doesn't make it easy on the other guys at minimum. And I mean, we're talking about 4C here, right? Right shot, penalty killing. I mean, checks the boxes, but he's no longer 28 or even 31 years old. He's 34, and he's been away from the game for 2 years. I still personally anticipated a situation that we saw with Jason Demare last year, where he plays in camp. They don't have to waive him because he's not signed, and they offer him a 25 game PTO down in the American League to to continue to work his game into shape and give the team an idea of what where he's at without having to take a huge risk. Like one alternative, and this is what got some people up in arms, is you might have to waive Raphael Lavoie to make room for a veteran player like any of the PTOs. And a 23-year-old forward who's progressed like Lavoie, who's a 6'4" with a booming shot, and some toughness in his game. You don't want to be giving up on that player, and I don't want to be giving up on that player. At the same time, having PTOs in camp and giving them a look, I don't really see a big problem with that unless they're Kirill Tulipov and they're trying to kill their teammates. That wasn't a PTO. Or camp invite, I guess he was.
With all the zone defense the Oilers are going to face this year, Bruce, they're going to need some guys who can fire that puck from the outside and score. Because that's what the zone gives up, time and space on the outside.
Yep.
And you need players who can really hammer it dangerously at the net. And Lavoie might be one of those guys. Leon Draisaitl and Bouchard, of course. McDavid, Kane. Nurse has a good outside shot. But you're going to need some players down the lineup, too, who can really freaking fire that puck at the net, because that shot's going to be there. And I haven't seen Lavoie play in a while.
He looked good in Winnipeg. He
Yeah.
only played the one Winnipeg game so far, and the Oilers sent a weak group, and they got clobbered eventually. But they actually had first two periods weren't bad. And Lavoie, I thought he showed pretty well in that game, and he showed not just the shot, but he also, he was physically a force in that game, banging on the boards. And there was a play where he Winnipeg was trying to break out, and Lavoie came uh, and stole the puck from the Winnipeg player just inside the Jets' blue line, and then big Logan Stanley, like the huge defenseman on Winnipeg, took a run at Lavoie, and Lavoie saw him coming and just put him right on his ass. It was great. Like, he was the biggest guy on the other team. Thought he was hitting Lavoie, and he was the guy who wound up on the ice, and Lavoie was the guy who hung on to the puck and kept it in the zone. And just a real small vignette, but the kind of decisive puck battle win that you love to see, stealing the puck and then protecting it. And if he's got an element of that to his game, that works well really on any line. But it's just fine to have a guy in the bottom six who can do that. And at his size, there's reasons to be hopeful, and he's got some big games coming up in this preseason. I think Woodcroft said he's going to play at least 3 more games of the remaining 5.
I sure have liked Lavoie in the past. He's a great big guy, fierce. He can be fierce. I understand people who've been watching him lately have not necessarily been impressed with his physical play in the AHL. Fierce taking the puck to the net, though, and likes to score. So I don't know if he fits, though. Like, is there going to be a fit? Do they need that guy? They have Dylan Holloway.
Mm-hmm.
They got Warren Fogle. Those are kind of guys. That's kind of that player as well. It depends what they're looking for. I don't know Adam Erne, if he's gonna. I didn't necessarily. I didn't see much from him, so not sure about that one. There's Lane Peterson. What do you think of him, Bruce?
I like his skating. I think he's got good command in that part of the game. But no real skill that stood out in Sean in any kind of way. He's played the 2 home games so far, and he was in frame, but never didn't make a lot happen. Again, 4C. It's that the job of that guy is to usually make sure things don't happen when he's out there, especially bad things. And so he's in the mix, but I think he's probably a better fit for 1C in Bakersfield than on the Oilers roster, and I anticipate he'll get waived successfully and wind up down in the AHL.
He reminded me a bit of Ryan Potulny. And that's damning with faint praise, but Ryan Potulny played in the NHL on a bad Oilers team, but kind of a decent-ish offensive player who maybe doesn't have the defensive chops to make it as a 3C in the NHL. McLeod and Ekholm are apparently coming back. And Bruce, I want to talk about Sutter, Lavoie, Peterson in the context of fit for an NHL team, because some people are all about the skill. And I'm going to refer to a thread by David Johnson at Hockey Analysis on X, who is the former analytics guy with the Flames. Right. And he pointed out a very interesting interview with Sam Ventura, Buffalo Sabres VP of Hockey Strategy and Research and Analytics guy. So I'm just going to read Johnson's thread, try to get through it here without coughing too much. Johnson says, quote, "First, Ventura's comment on the gap between publicly available data and privately available data. Quote from Ventura, I think it is a pretty big gap, frankly. I agree here. Not only is the event level data better, but as Sam points out, he has access, player puck tracking, scouting reports, etc. So we often see people making decisive comments based on the publicly available stats. I always shake my head, Bruce. The NHL teams all have better data. Even the teams that haven't been big into analytics, like the Oilers, have had better data than's available in the public. It's more granular. It focuses on things that are more at the heart of the game than Corsi and Fenwick, which were always meant as proxy stats to figure out who's involved in the scoring chances. That's what they were. That was the purpose of those stats, to figure out who is involved in scoring chances. Well, they're tracking that, and they have that information in the NHL teams. So continue on with Johnson. Earlier in the interview, Ventura talked about how his enhanced data changed what he thought he knew from his War on Ice days, and that the intuitions of hockey people were more often than not correct. Ventura, quote, "One thing I learned in hindsight was that a lot of what I thought I knew at the time when I started working in hockey was wrong. And a lot of what they thought they knew, their intuitions, were right. It wasn't until we got better data and really spent a lot of time studying that better data that we were able to really figure out that a lot of the things that we thought we knew actually weren't true." Bruce, I've been saying this about Corsi and Fenwick and that kind of analysis for more than a decade now. Amen. And good for Ventura for admitting it. These stats they give you some information.
Yep.
I will not take that away from the people who invest heavily in these stats. And the X goals for are a slight improvement over Corsi and Fenwick in terms of trying to determine who's involved in scoring chances and who are not. But it's not up to what the NHL teams have. It doesn't zero in on the individual play in the way. And Ventura is now saying that. Here is a guy who was on War on Ice. This is one of the main, stat sites for that kind of analysis. And he's saying
they were great.
He was saying we're getting it wrong. And I just want people to have that in mind. So Michael Parkatti, the new Oilers analytics guy, comes from the same school as Ventura. To me, I'm glad they made the hire. Mm-hmm. And I hope Parkatti has the humility of Ventura to learn. And maybe he's already moved on. Like maybe he's already well past this. I can't say. Mm-hmm. But I found Michael Parkatti to be pretty strident in the past and often wrong because he puts so much weight on these stats. And I'm hoping that he grows, he learns, he gets better. Mm-hmm. I think he will, Bruce. Look at our work. We've improved our work in the last decade immensely. We know a lot more about what we do know and don't know compared to a decade ago. And I think Michael Parkatti's in the same camp.
He's a very smart man.
He is. I think he can do an excellent job. I'm glad they made that hire. I think it was a really good idea. I just think, people have got to realize the limitations of that work. And it would help people online when they're writing their long stories about this stat, that stat, or blogging about it. Like NHL people have moved way past this. They don't believe in it. They don't use it for the kind of analysis they're doing to trade players. So keep that in mind. That's my rant.
Yeah. Well, War on Ice, they were probably my favorite of all the sites that have come and unfortunately gone over the years. And the other one that's very high on my list is David Johnson's own site, hockeyanalytics.com or CA. That was so great on its organization of counting stats, right? Corsi, Fenwick, what have you. This was even before expected goals. And of course, his site went dark the day he joined the Flames. And I'm not sure what he'll come back with, but the other aspect, David, of course, analytics itself has grown and developed over the years. It's not just Corsi and Fenwick anymore. There's a lot more to it. And as you say, expected goals is one thing where they're trying to weave in quality to quantity.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is what we've tried to do, right? It's why we don't look at every kind of scoring chance shot. We focus on the grade A shots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing that's changing, and we really don't know yet what impact it's going to have, is the chip data that they're collecting from from the puck and from players, of how fast they're skating, who's going where. And the other thing that we don't have, and you and I don't have, compared to people working for the Oilers, for example, is knowledge of exactly what is the system, right? Like we're guessing in some cases of who made a mistake based on what we saw on the ice. And as you say, that that one example of Nurse chasing the guy out to the blue line. Well, out to the blue line's maybe a bit much. But if he was following the system, is it his fault or is it the system's fault?
Well,
You
he still
know,
got beat no matter what, right?
yeah, well, he got picked
But
by Fogel,
the fact
and
that he was
Skinner
way
got
out
beat
there,
from the
yeah,
face-off dot by a defenseman's wrist shot.
yeah,
And to me, that was the mistake on that play. The replay is right in your article, and you watch it, and even the announcer says he shouldn't be getting beat from there. But anyway, that's the trouble with isolating on one or two plays. It's more what happens on an ongoing basis. Are the defensemen chasing too much? And I'd say yes, they were. And so anyway, the people that are analyzing on behalf of the team, the video coaches and so on,
yeah.
they have a real more detailed idea of what's expected from the players based on what the coaches are asking them to do. Whereas we don't have that direct knowledge. And so there's, there's a bit of a missing link, even as, we do our very best to identify. And as you know, identifying defensive uh, is by far the tougher half of the equation, as opposed to who was involved in a scoring chance for the team, right? You can pick out the guy who made the pass, who took the shot, who screened the goalie, who caused the turnover, or what have you. On the defensive side, the other guys have got the puck and you're reacting to it. And it's a little bit tougher to judge who's doing what correctly. So that's another aspect of it.
Sure is. It is tough. We've had many debates over players and who's responsible.
Hmm.
Um, it's good to have a little bit more knowledge. I think we're getting better at it. We're
Yeah,
getting more knowledge
absolutely.
about systems. And Johnson, I'll just finish with a couple more things he said. David Johnson, formerly of the Flames. Public data is useful to some degree, but only at a high level. With private data, you can identify individual attributes that a player does well, not just infer whether the player is good or not. And once you start identifying individual player strengths and weaknesses, you can apply that information to team building by identifying your team's overall strengths and weaknesses. This is so much more valuable than this guy is better than that guy. So you've often talked about team building in terms of the morale of the team, in terms of Holland giving a fair shake. But this is another aspect of team building, filling various needs on the team, like for a checker,
Absolutely.
for a defensive player. I think
Mhm.
Matthias Janmark has been grossly underrated in Edmonton because maybe, I don't know his Corsi
He's
and
got
Fenwicker
Hayes.
X-Goal for numbers, and I don't particularly care about them, but he is a solid defensive player. He is the best defensive winger I've seen in Edmonton since Fernando Persani, I think. And on the penalty kill and checking, he could be an anchor on a third line that helps you win the Stanley Cup. So I think that this is what Johnson's talking about is just, analytics are good, but you need the right numbers, you need the right assessors. You got to get it all right. And or you're going to be basing your strongly held opinions on faulty information, and people are going to disagree with you. So
Well, you need balance, and that's for sure. You need different guys to do different things, and there's some stats where David, I would frankly be right in the middle of the pack than on either extreme of it. And those are things like block shots, penalty minutes, hits. You don't want to be a passive team. On the other hand, you don't want the other guy to have the puck all the time, which is some part of what those stats tell you is who's trying to create offense. And so too much or too little is a bad thing. In the middle of the pack is all right, but you want to also have balance across your team, right? Do the Oilers need to go and bring in another power player, or do they need another penalty killer? At this point in time, I'm pretty happy with the power play and the penalty kill. So Matthias Janmark is a pretty good penalty killer, and he's going to play a role on that unit. And that's why they're even looking at Brandon Sutter, is that he brings things that are lacking, and he's I think the odds are against him, but I understand why they're looking at him.
this is the problem for Raphael Lavoie. He doesn't kill penalties. He never has.
Mm-hmm.
And Xavier Bourgault, who is in direct competition with Lavoie kills penalties. He's been killing penalties in the AHL, and it's just like,
And he's good at it.
yeah, it's a huge difference
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the talent stack that the player brings to the team.
Yep.
You know, Lavoie, Clean Costin found a way to make a similar, not the same, talent stack work by providing opportunistic scoring and big hitting and solid enough defensive play. Chason was the same kind of player in his own way. He could score and hit. So there is an opportunity. That kind of player can help a good team.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it already with two different players. So Lavoie could make the team and he could help. But a player who can score and also then kill penalties, because Costin and Chason could not do that.
Right.
That's just one more thing
Mm-hmm.
that helps out. And then if you're a center and you can actually play defensively at center, and this is where I have real questions about Sutter. We've seen lots of older centers come in like Belanger and Gordon and on and on and on who couldn't defend at the center position anymore, and cost the Oilers tons of goals against because they were just too slow. And that's what I'm worried about with Sutter. So I love your suggestion of giving this guy a PTO in the AHL and have him go down there and have one last kick of the can there. And maybe he works out and maybe he actually is what you need in the playoffs because his skating and his conditioning picks up. That would be a fantastic story. And I hope to see it happen. And just to get back to Michael Parkatti, I want to stress, like, fantastic story that the Oilers are addressing this area, building a team. I don't think he'll be the last hire. I think they should hire more people. Obviously. Yeah. Video. I don't know if video tracking is his strength or I don't really know his talent stack.
They just hired someone specific for that as well. The assistant. What they call him?
Well, I'm talking about I'm actually
coaching analytics and.
Yeah, I'm talking about the numbers they're getting from the chip.
Right. Okay.
That all of that mammoth amount of data that they're getting in and analyzing that properly. So I'm glad they're putting together a team, and I wish Michael well. And he's clearly a really sharp guy, smart guy, and he was well.
He was the. Can't remember his exact title. I mean, with the Oilers, he's manager of data and analytics, and with EPCOR, he had a similar title. Out in the real world, and with adding layers of information to the management decision-making process there. And the one thing that I know Michael personally, I think he's very good at explaining and kind of making the connection of what the numbers mean. And that's a huge disconnect and has been with the Oilers, I think, over the years, that the getting the data is one thing, but explaining it to other folks that maybe are less math inclined is often where things fall apart, especially when you're dealing with the 200 hockey men. And Oilers are making big progress there. I think Brad Holland, credit where due, he was sort of the first breath of change in the Oilers' approach towards analytics. And now they've added, Jeff Jackson and Michael Parkatti, and they're starting to become a critical mass of people who, understand that it is part of a larger picture. It's not the be all and end all. But on the other hand, ignore it at your peril. Get as much information as you call it. Quit calling it analytics and start calling it information. That's one thing. Use it, but use it judiciously and use it within a hockey context that the coach, the players, everyone is sort of on the same page with, and communications from the numbers guys, not always a strength, and it needs to be. And I think for Mike Parkatti, it is a strength. So
good. That's good to hear. Maybe the 200 hockey men who were sneered at in Edmonton by the analytics crowd weren't so
Not just in Edmonton.
stupid. Weren't so stupid after all. I mean, that's what Sam Ventura is saying.
Right. No, I hear that. Yeah, absolutely.
And listen, Roger Nielsen started doing video review and scoring chance analysis in the 70s. Dave Tippett did it. A lot of these guys had highly granular, useful information at their fingertips, which probably directly contradicted what they were hearing on the internet from some people. And so good for those guys. Now that Sam Ventura has had his moment, I'm just waiting for Tyler Dello to come to have his mea culpa and say, when I was so sure 100%, viciously aggressive that I was correct all that time, I was actually wrong now and then. That would be interesting to hear. I wonder if we'll ever hear that, Bruce. I doubt it.
Well, Tyler's in New Jersey now.
Yes.
So it's right. A long way away. And to be fair, the Devils are absolutely crushing it in terms of their rapid rise up through the ranks. And they are going to be a very strong contender in the immediate years to come. So part of it is, cashing a couple of first overall draft picks, but
that helps.
The Oilers had that opportunity too over the years, and anyways, they're a club on the rise and a team I'm watching with great interest because of that connection.
Tyler was obviously a very smart guy, but he had
abrasive for sure.
Yeah, and too much faith in numbers, he was putting too much faith in numbers which were inadequate to the claims he was making on them. But he had the right mindset in some ways to do well, and so good for him.
Yeah, but he's a dad now, so it's not just all about data and numbers. There's a certain black art to it.
Well, they've got
judiciously using it.
I don't know if he was involved in the drafting of Luke Hughes, but that guy is unbelievably talented. Luke. Okay. Luke is unbelievably talented skater and puck handler. We'll see how he turns out at the NHL level. But man, I was impressed with Luke Hughes in the World Junior Tournament. So if Tyler was involved in that, kudos to Tyler Dello. I don't know how far his reach goes, but he always loves skill. He always loves skill, to give him credit.
Awesome.
And yeah, maybe he's involved in amateur drafting in some significant way. We don't know that or not. So, all right, Bruce, I know you got to go. So let's leave it there. Thanks for talking today.
All right, game time tonight and tomorrow night, and we'll have our usual coverage at the Cult of Hockey on our site. We'll get into post-game podcasts when the regular season starts. But it's nice to get caught up.
All righty. Thanks again, Bruce.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.